brutal death metal hails! This time we go to Sweden, and we are ready to get into brutality even more. Now, earlier this week I was talking about Deranged, the late album which just came during spring. And that kind of got me thinking,
what could be the album of the month in July? Let me see.
Yes, it must be Deranged, because
I'm kind of a deranged also.
seriously speaking, that kind of a album which I reviewed earlier got me thinking, I really need to get to talk about that more. Why so? Because Deranged is in fact one of the best death metal bands from Sweden, like all time. And it's old as hell, so why not talk about it? Plainfield Cemetery is a Deranged album that came out in the first years of 2000s, and as such it's already old enough to be labeled as classic album. I reviewed this album back in the days when it came out, and I remember enjoying it very much. Even more than previous Deranged albums, which I heard, which then again also are pretty decent, good, and all that stuff. But I think back in the days when I just got it for the first time, this really got the brutality on a whole different level. At least in so many ways. I mean, Sweden is not exactly known for brutal death metal, even though there are classic bands such as Entombed, Dismember, Grave, etc. Anyway, Plainfield Cemetery totally grabbed me by the balls, butt, neck, chokehold, whatever, and delivered such lethal blows that I had no choice but to praise this band back then. So, more than 15 years later, I'm coming back to this album and I'm like, will it still have the same impact on me now that I'm older, grumpier, more cynical, and all that stuff. And luckily, I was wrong. Or actually correct. Correct in the sense that I knew I would like it, but would I like it as much as I liked back then? And yes, I did. And yes, I do. Plainfield Cemetery is like a Swedish version of Cannibal Corpse, but in some ways it's kind of a darker and more sinister. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to disrespect Cannibal Corpse. It's a great death metal band, and for a reason, one of the most famous, most successful death metal band. But Cannibal Corpse has always also had this kind of a goofy way to approach its death metal. And also non-goofy ones. I mean, they're really brutal tracks. Also, just check out some of the names and all that stuff. But there's something even more, I don't know, darker with Deranged mentality doing basically the same, just with a kind of a Swedish twist. So it's like this. In America, there are lots of great crime stories, kind of a film noir, and there's serial killers and all that stuff. Well, just as it happens, in Sweden there are also great crime stories and crime writers who are just telling grimy stories about that stuff. Maybe Sweden doesn't have exactly the same amount of serial killers. No, they don't. But that's beside the point. The mentality of these Swedish death metal heads is just like that. It goes crazy, violent, kind of a serial killer, killing spree type of mentality when, I don't know, intestines are taken out, they're chopped into pieces, eaten, sold, given, I don't know, whatever. So, that's why I chose Deranged to be the album of this month. Now if we take quickly, I kind of look at the discography here in the Metal Archive site by Deranged, you will see that while there are plenty of albums, it's not exactly as active as, for instance, Cannibal Corpse, which basically puts out a new album every 2 years. So roughly some 16 albums around in 32 or something like that years. Now, it's not like Deranged have been lazy. I mean, if you take a look, there are like 10 albums, roughly, and some splits and whatever. But the thing here is, the band has actually suffered from lineup changes and all that stuff. For example, if you take a look at this nowadays member list, you will see that only one member is the original one, that from 1991. Take a look at past members and you will find quite a list of members who just came and gone. You know, some from the 90s gone already in the 90s, some went out in 2000s and all that stuff. So a lot has been going on. So, for me personally, I think Deranged really peaked around these years here. 2002 with Plainfield Cemetery, Obscenities in B-flat 2006, Red Light Murder Case in 2008. Maybe it's just me, but I think the band here reached the brutality, the peak moments, but also great riffs and, good production and all that stuff. It's not bad anyway, even nowadays, but something has changed because of the lineup change and all that stuff. Now, back to Plainfield Cemetery. From the very beginning of the album to the very end of the album, there are no breathing spaces. And some might say, yeah, it's kind of like too much to go with, pace like that. But then again, you have to realize it's hardly more than 30 minutes an album. So it's more like this one sprint you're gonna take. Well, more than sprint technically because it's 37 minutes, but I mean, it kind of is to deliver this murder works or spree killing or whatever. Killing spree maybe, because all these individual songs are like individual murders, killings, whatever. And then it kind of stops quickly. But by the time you're finished, there's blood and gore and intestines and brain and who knows what all around. And you're like, I cannot breathe enough, I cannot inhale, exhale, whatever. You're just done with a kind of a murder works. And still to this day, I think Plainfield Cemetery is one of the best brutal death metal albums out there, like throughout the times. Great album which I think is kind of underrated. Maybe it's not underrated, maybe it's just not that known. So in my opinion, Deranged definitely needs and deserves more attention, more fans and people who are like, hey, what is this great band? I need to listen to it more, I need to buy it and all that stuff. So, be it new Deranged, be it old or somewhere in the between. This is a great band. And in case you have missed Plainfield Cemetery like earlier, now it's time to get up and check it out once again. Great band, great album. Go check it out. Thank you for watching and bye bye.